A very good evening to you. You're watching Prime Time News on News First. I am Chaturanga Hapuarachi. Before we go into the stories in detail, let's first take a look at the headlines. Cabinet to write off non-consumption loans granted up to 100,000 rupees to females in drought-affected districts. State Minister Iran says educated thieves more dangerous than uneducated ones. Education Ministry Secretary refused to release personal files of 1,014 public servants believed to be political victims. Sri Lanka move up in the ICC's Test cricket rankings. On to those stories in detail now. The Cabinet of Ministers has decided to write off the non-consumption loans granted up to 100,000 rupees to women in drought-affected districts by all registered finance companies.
According to the decision taken by the Cabinet of Ministers, which convened today under the auspices of President Maithripala Sirisena, the non-consumption loans will be written off for women in 12 districts that were affected by the recent drought for 5 consecutive seasons. Further, the government has also decided to introduce an interest rate cap of 30% per annum on all future loans given by microfinance companies.
A decision was taken to write off the loans granted by microfinance companies to the drought-affected people and introduce a debt relief program. Under Phase 1, this will be implemented in the north and other drought-affected areas. This will not be limited to just the north and east. It will be implemented in several districts. Definitely. The Finance Minister drew the attention on the serious matter and proposed that legislation will be designed for this purpose. Go and look at the historic Moragahakanda Kaluganga project. Next week, the 100th model village will be vested in the public. The people see it very well. It appears that you don't see it much. Most often you point the microphone and get a voice cut when someone comes out of a religious site. But I think on the candidacy of the presidential election, the flower bud has made a mess out of it. There is an order against the former president on speaking about the presidential candidacy. A program which will mesmerize the country will be initiated in the future. It will make you sweat as well. Every journey we take on is being implemented within the confines of good governance, not us. It has come to my notice that there seems to be a rift within the flower bud about whether it be brother, father, sister, grandson, granddaughter, grandfather or grandmother. Why don't you ask that question when you point the microphone? No, you cannot, because you will start sweating. See, we are already getting off our vehicles and answering any question. It is not the people, it is you who is saying it. It was the previous government which ruined it. We are fixing it. A forum on budget proposals for 2019-2020 for human capital development took place in Colombo today. Speaking at the event, State Minister of Finance Eran Wickramaratne commented on the challenges faced by politicians.
We are a 21 million population, just the size of one city in Asia. And therefore our markets will not enable us to have very high living standards. And therefore we have to have the global markets, the South Asian markets. That's where we have to go. We cannot go there by just protecting ourselves. We have to compete. This is the challenge we have. We are politicians. We are elected by the people. People look and say, what's the development around? Education, you can't see. Health, you can't see. But you build a bridge, you build a road, it is very, very visible. This is the challenge the politicians face. And we are often told, where is the development? I don't know if you are aware. Our government is building more highway capacity than the previous government did in their 10 years. More kilometers are being built by the present government than the previous government built. Matara to Hambantota highway, a highway to Kandy, ring roads, and more kilometers than the previous regime built. I don't personally agree with that policy myself, but I'm just telling you the facts. I believe that rather than building those highways, whatever the electoral consequences are, that we should be putting some of those resources in human capital development, because that's where the future of the country should be. We need to create a more equal society. Sometimes in the guise of equality, we are doing things which may not be very, very equal. Whatever education we have, we need to have an ethical education. We need to be able to distinguish between right and wrong, because educated thieves are far more dangerous than uneducated ones.
This event was organized by the National Human Resources Development Council, the Institute of Chartered Accountants of Sri Lanka and the International Chamber of Commerce Sri Lanka.
There's no shortage of plumbers in Australia who are millionaires, who drive very fine cars. It's a perfectly legitimate livelihood. I think here in Sri Lanka, apologies if I've got it wrong, I've only been here 2.5 years, but it seems to me that the value that's attached to a vocational livelihood is perhaps not as great as it could and should be. It seems to me that many parents in Sri Lanka want their kids to grow up to be doctors or lawyers or accountants or perhaps politicians. I don't know, Erin, whether that's true. But the point I want to make here is that I think there is much more that could be done in this country to shift mindsets.
It is widely accepted that criticizing education itself is not a good thing. Therefore, here in Sri Lanka, the time has come for those in responsible positions to take note of the present situation. Up next is Action TV.
There is an attempt to include 1,014 underqualified people to the Education Administrative Service under the label of those who have been provided relief for political victimization. In the latest attempt made by the Education Ministry to cover up the inclusion of underqualified people to the service, the Secretary to the Ministry of Education writes this letter to the Public Services Commission. This was in response to the request made by the Public Services Commission to release to them the personal files of all 1,014 people in question. On the 5th of July, speaking in Parliament, the subject minister made a statement regarding the list of those who are to be given relief for political victimization. People who were victimized in a proper manner were given relief. All the appeals were inspected by a committee comprising of senior public officials. They were inspected by the Public Services Commission as well. Grading was only given to 1,018 people. It was done according to a proper process. If one claims that an appointment was given to a person who does not deserve it, that is similar to challenging the Public Services Commission. On the 10th of July, the Public Services Commission made the following clarification, making invalid the statement made by the minister. Obtain a soundbite from this individual here. He is the chairman of the Education Service Commission. Speak with him. Since we are bound to implement the state decisions, we will implement the government's decision. That is not the job of the Public Services Commission. The Education Ministry Secretary sent a list and sends it to the Cabinet. From there, it is approved. We have acted according to that list. The Public Services Commission had informed Cabinet that their decision cannot be enforced as it is. We have not issued any appointment letters to any person. 6 days later, the Public Services Commission requests from the Ministry of Education to release the personal files of all 1,014 individuals for the purpose to ascertain their qualifications. Rather than complying to this request, the Secretary to the Ministry responds to the Commission by saying that the personal files have been considered and no disciplinary issues were found in them. Rather than complying to this request, the Secretary to the Ministry responds to the Commission by saying that the personal files have been considered and no disciplinary issues were found in them. The Education Ministry will be capable of going through the personal files of 1,014 people within a period of 8 days only if they obtained and confirmed the assistance from all 98 zonal officers via the 9 provincial education directors. The reason is because the 1,014 personal files are spread across the 98 zonal officers. It is now the responsibility of the Public Services Commission to ascertain whether the Education Ministry even made a phone call to the zonal officers to question the qualifications of at least one of the 1,014 individuals in question.
Still in local news, the Development Committee meeting of the Kiran Division in Batticaloa was held today.
Deputy Minister Amir Ali, TNA parliamentarians S. Vyalendran and S. Yogeshwaran and other politicians attended the meeting, and views were expressed regarding land in the area being handed over to Chinese companies. I have received information that a decision was reached in 2016 to hand over land in Kiran Divisional Secretariat to several Chinese companies.
No.
The government has reached an agreement to provide 6,250 hectares to Chinese companies. I have the copies of the documents. The agreement was reached in 2016. They have obtained 2,500 hectares from the area behind Topigala for a reserve. That has now been given to a private businessman. This has not received the approval of the Development Committee. No one is aware of this. We will reach a decision today that we will not grant approval for this. We will reach a decision that the land should not be given. The agreement has been reached with the Chinese CIMC engineering company. If the land in our area is handed over to Chinese companies, we will have to face a big problem. We will not have land to cultivate. We will not have feeding grounds for the animals. There are several Chinese and Indian investment projects being carried out in our country through loan schemes as well as partnerships. The projects pertaining to Mattala Airport, the Kankasanturai Port, the sugar factory in Kantale, as well as several oil tanks in Trincomalee are being carried out with India. The projects pertaining to the Colombo Port City, the Hambantota Port, the Norochole Power Plant, the Colombo South Port, the Southern Expressway Phase 3, the Matara-Hambantota stretch of the Southern Railway Line, Phase 1 of the Central Expressway from Kadawatha to Keravalapitia of the Outer Circular Highway.
An event to mark the founding of the Chinese People's Liberation Army took place last evening under the auspices of former President Mahinda Rajapaksa.
The event was held at the Shangri-La Hotel in Colombo, and former President Mahinda Rajapaksa was welcomed by the Chinese ambassador to Sri Lanka. The chief guest for the event was Kapila Vaidyaratna, the Secretary of Defence, and also saw former Secretary of Defence Gotabaya Rajapaksa in attendance. The former president was engaged in a lengthy discussion with the opposition leader R. Sampanthan before the event commenced. The Chinese national anthem was played to open the event, and it was followed by the Sri Lankan national anthem. China's armed forces followed a comprehensive, cooperative and sustainable security concept, and it will continue to develop military-to-military relations. The PRA will strive to establish security mechanisms to further strengthen security. Military confidence building measures will see security cooperation, and it will create a secure environment favorable for peaceful development. China has provided powerful support to socio-economic development and military investment to Sri Lanka. The friendship between China and Sri Lanka has grown even stronger. Chinese military officials are aware of improving relations with the Sri Lankan military.
The China's assistance in providing military equipment, weapons, ammunition and technology to Sri Lanka indicate the success of the bilateral military relationships between the two nations. The signing of the strategic partnership of cooperation featuring sincere mutual support and long-lasting friendship strengthen the existing and future bilateral ties between China and Sri Lanka. However, it is in the 21st century that bilateral relations grew stronger than ever. We are grateful to China and its people for the aid and the support given to Sri Lanka.
Several government MPs and ministers were also present at the event to mark the founding of the Chinese People's Liberation Army.
Leader of the JVP Anurakumar Dissanayake, speaking at a rally organized by the Socialist Youth Association in Nugegoda, made the following remarks.
When we were in the cabinet of former President Chandrika Kumaratunga, a proposal on the need of the country with regard to the Hambantota port construction was presented. It was for a supply port. Over 200 ships passed close to the port. The objective of constructing the Hambantota port was to engage in the service of supplying water, fuel, food and repair ships. As per our economic strategy, the Hambantota port was a service port. According to the Chinese strategy, Hambantota is a port where goods are moved and unloaded. For whose purpose was the port sold? China is constructing centers across the globe to realize their international economic purposes. China is capable of giving the Sri Lankan government a loan to construct a port. They are very aware they can purchase the port. Economically, we are independent.
Leader of the National Freedom Front, Vimal Weerawansa, speaking in Colombo yesterday, commented on the attempt to hand over operations of the Mattala airport to India.
Is this airport being obtained with a commercial objective or not? Shiv Shankar Menon, India's former national security advisor, penned a book and he states Sri Lanka is located 14 miles away from India. Means it is like a ship where Indian planes can land. If India looks at Sri Lanka from a military perspective, it will be seen as what was mentioned by Shiv Shankar Menon. It is clear that by acquiring the Mattala airport, India can take over control of the ship in which planes come to land. Therefore, this deal is not something that is done with a commercial objective.
The Frontline Socialist Party commented on the influence from China, India and the United States during an event in Gampaha.
New York Times. It was reported in the New York Times that China Harbour, a Chinese company, had given money to Mahinda Rajapaksa for his presidential election campaign. According to the 2016 report of the US State Department, they had spent $354 million for the elections of 3 countries. Among the 3 countries is Sri Lanka. The people believe an election is the establishment of the people's mandate. There is no such thing. This is a power struggle between the US and China. In that power struggle, the US and India have won.
Different people are having different opinions. Nevertheless, we too have an opinion. The Mahaveli Development Program is known as the largest multi-purpose national development program to take place in Sri Lanka. For this project, foreign financial facilities were obtained and they were paid off during the respective period. Thereby, the project became the property of the country and the former leaders were not even interested in selling off those resources. However, what is happening today? Loans are obtained from China and India as they please, and the massive resources of this country are being sold off to India and China. The situation has reached a critical stage where not only the ports and airports of the country are being sold off, but the roads in the country too are likely to be sold to foreigners. It is widely discussed that Palali, which is strategically important, is also to be given to foreigners. There are legitimate concerns that giving away airports and ports will impinge on the country's security as well as the long-term economic benefit. Who gave the rulers the authority to betray the nation to foreigners? If one cannot realize the aspirations of the people, should one not hand over that task to those who can do it? Please do not enter into agreements to sell off or lease this country that will destroy the nation as a whole. Leave this country and go settle in those places. If not, the people will come together and chase them all away. The resources in the country are for the future generations. Selling them off is not a good thing. If you can't do this, please leave the country. This is all I can say. We are not speaking against the investments. Do not sell this country. This is our motherland. No matter who the ruler is, we do not approve the handover of the nation to foreigners. We voted on the 8th of January not to sell off this country. The Hambantota port, Mattala port, the Galle International Cricket Stadium are required. These people may go to even India and live there. We don't mind if the President, Prime Minister, Mahinda Rajapaksa and Gotabaya Rajapaksa go there. We need these resources and not the politics.
Question of the day. What is Sri Lanka's position in the ICC's Test cricket rankings? Number 1, number 3, number 6, number 8.
A very good evening to all our viewers and welcome to Weather First. Let's now take a look at the weather forecast for the next few days. Strong winds can be expected across the island in coastal areas and in the central hills and especially in the northwestern, western and southern provinces, wind speed can be increasing over and over again. If we take a look at the weather forecast for tomorrow, light showers can be experienced in Colombo and in Ratnapur areas, and day after tomorrow, a favorable weather condition will prevail in the north and north central areas. On the 27th of this month, light showers can be experienced in Gaul and in Ratnapura, and on the 28th of this month, a favorable weather condition will prevail in the Colombo district. Let's now take a look at the weather forecast for Colombo for the next few days.
The Voice for Justice organisation convened a media briefing in Colombo today.
The independent television network, which was ranked at the top, has dropped to 6th or 7th position in the rankings. We have doubts as to why the independent television network suffered these losses. The Hambantota port was termed as a loss and was leased for 99 years to the Chinese. Now they are terming the Mattalaya port as a loss and are to sell it to the Chinese. We are stating with responsibility that the independent television will also be sold to a powerful minister in government, claiming that it is suffering losses.
Leader of the National Unity Alliance, Asad Sali, convened a media briefing in Colombo today.
Back then we saw all over Sri Lanka when they did projects, all of them carried the name Mahinda Rajapaksa. The Nelum Kuluna is Mahinda Rajapaksa. They built a stadium that was also Mahinda Rajapaksa. They built an auditorium and a pavilion, and that is also Mahinda Rajapaksa. The Matale Airport and the Hambantota Harbour, those are also Mahinda Rajapaksa. The only thing without his name was a cemetery. We remember how Priyamadasa built thousands of homes under the Gam Udava program, but never named it after him. When they named a 100-foot road after his name in Maligawata, he rejected that as well. We had leaders like this. Mahinda Rajapaksa is the only leader to take loans and build things after himself.
The committee to gather recommendations for a new constitution met once again today.
As of now, the committee has submitted 2 reports with several recommendations. While 6 members have put together one report, 2 members have separately put together another report. TNA MP M.A. Sumandiran and UNP MP Jayampatha Wickramaratne is said to have been intervening in this process. It is reported that the committee has requested the independents to work impartially. This is not the first time the 2 MPs have got involved in this matter. MP Jayampatha Wickramaratne had taken a lead role in formulating the 19th Amendment to the Constitution. The amendments that took measures to greatly reduce the powers of the President while bringing in clauses that make it impossible to remove the Prime Minister was also the brainchild of these individuals. Even though there are also 19 clauses that permit the arrest of journalists that was stopped after the Supreme Court provided determination. With what objective in mind are these individuals coming forward yet again with a new constitution? After MP Sumandiran said that there are no English and Tamil translations of the bond report, the debate has once again been delayed. Not only that, he also represented an accused official when facing the commission. A new constitution will directly contribute to the future of the country, and in this matter, the people are watching.
What is Sri Lanka's position in the ICC's Test cricket rankings? The answer is number 6.
The Yadi procession carrying the Velayuda organised by the Capital Maharaja Organisation Limited is reaching the Sella Katharagama sacred grounds.
The Velayuda, which travelled from the historic Selva Sannidhi Kovil in Jaffna, was brought to the head office of the Capital Maharaja Organisation Limited in a colourful parade. Thereafter, the procession left the premises following special pujas to Katharagama.
The Gammadda team was able to repair the building of the Yahangalla Primary School in Bandagiriya and rest it with the students.
The Yahangalla Primary School in Bandagiriya has a history of 38 years and comprises only 2 buildings. The students who were receiving education here were facing several risks due to the dilapidated nature of the school buildings. With the support of Eslon Lanka Private Limited, government set off to renovate one of the buildings under the 1000 Projects initiative. The work was completed in 1.5 months and it was handed over to the students today.
We are waiting to see how you will treat the plants. We will come back in 6 months to check the progress. These gentlemen from Eslon have given us the financial assistance to construct this building for you.
In sports news now, Charit Senanayake has been appointed as the manager of the Sri Lanka cricket team. Sri Lanka Cricket said his appointment will be in effect from the 25th of July to the 30th of September this year. Senanayake will function as the team manager of the national team up until the conclusion of the Asia Cup, which will be played in September 2018. Meanwhile, a cabinet paper was submitted to the Cabinet of Ministers today on the appointment of a competent authority for Sri Lanka cricket. Shahin Jurampati joins us now from the newsroom for a detailed report.
Well, thank you very much, Chaturanga. Good evening to you and everyone watching News First Primetime News tonight. Well, Sri Lanka cricket currently is being administered by what they like to call a competent authority. So what happened today was that the Sports Minister Faisal Mustafa submitted a cabinet paper to the Cabinet of Ministers which convened today, stating that this is how Sri Lanka cricket is currently being administered and how it is being operated, and that it was submitted for the Cabinet's approval, which will eventually go on to be tabled in Parliament. Now, the cabinet paper states specifically that Sri Lanka cricket is currently being administered or led by the Secretary to the Ministry of Sports. Now, let's talk about the Sri Lanka cricket elections, which has been under the spotlight of controversy over the past couple of months in Sri Lanka and on the international arena as well. Now, we are very much aware that the office bearers of Sri Lanka cricket are elected based on the votes which it receives. The office bearers and the president of Sri Lanka cricket are elected based on the votes it receives from the sports clubs in the country. Now, most often than not, but a constant allegation that has been at the center of this whole procedure is that sports clubs are involved in a massive scam here, that those who are actually qualified to take up the position of administering or leading Sri Lanka cricket are constantly ignored, and instead those who are not, who can actually win the votes, get elected to these top positions. Now, I know this statement might be misconceptualized to some form of effect. However, the backstory is the fact that these clubs, most often than not, are paid massive sums of money in the forms of bribes, benefits, so on and so forth. There are some sports clubs in the country who do not even have the minimal facilities to function as a cricket club or to let alone progress as a sporting club in the form of cricket. So these clubs sometimes are made assurances that in the form of bribes, money, so on and so forth, that their club will be uplifted in the future so that they can continue with their sports, so on and so forth. So technically this implies that only a person with a massive amount of wealth or influence who is entitled to be elected as president of Sri Lanka cricket. While this makes it almost impossible for people like in the names of Mahela Jayawardena, Kumar Sangakkara, Roshan Mahanama, or even Anna Ponchiheva, who have actually played cricket for the country and contributed massively to the sport of cricket in Sri Lanka. Impossible for them to get involved in Sri Lanka cricket given this massive involvement of politics in Sri Lanka cricket. So we kindly inform Minister Faisal Mustafa, you are the Minister of Provincial Councils and Local Government. You are a lawyer who has the capability of making constitutional amendments. You are very much aware of how to secure the safety and security of the constitutional amendments and the legal barriers in Sri Lanka. Now, though it is said that the president of SLC is elected to that position in a democratic manner, it doesn't appear to be so. So please bring forth a constitutional amendment or legal barrier which can prevent and which can enable this process to go on more transparently and democratically. Now, Mahela Jayawardena, we know over the past few months that Mahela Jayawardena, Kumar Sangakkara, Muttaya Muralidharan, Roshan Mahanama, and so on and so forth, were invited to take up a consultancy role at Sri Lanka cricket, which they very much refused. What Mahela Jayawardena, the former captain of Sri Lanka cricket, said was that they were invited for this position previously as well under the previous sports minister, and they made multiple proposals to develop Sri Lanka cricket and improve it. However, these proposals have gone on to be ignored over and again. Now, it should be noted that the former Minister of Sports is a lawyer, but the current sports minister is a president's council. All of these matters have been ignored, but Minister Faisal Mustafa, interim committees can be appointed and competent authorities can be appointed, but at the end of the day, the office bearers for Sri Lanka Cricket are elected under the Constitution of Sri Lanka Cricket, under the provisions of the Constitution of Sri Lanka Cricket, the regulations of the International Cricket Council, and more importantly, the sports law of Sri Lanka. We kindly request you to enact the law to enable and to prevent sports clubs in our country from being bought over for a sum of cash, for a bag of cash, just to win a couple of votes and see the sport of cricket being destroyed before our very eyes. Now, though Sri Lanka Cricket on multiple occasions claims to be an independent authority, the sports minister on numerous occasions appears to be constantly trying to keep this body, which has a massive amount of wealth and political influence, close to himself. Even Dayasri Jayasekara, the former Minister of Sports, was alleged to have been doing this. What happens is a person is helped to become the president of Sri Lanka Cricket, and eventually, inadvertently, the whole of Sri Lanka Cricket is politicized, which obviously leads to its own destruction. It was this minister, Minister Faisal Mustafa, who brought in the 19th Amendment to the Constitution and mysteriously curtailed the president, the powers of the president. He was a legal advisor to the president in drafting the Constitution as well. So his proposal and amendments technically made the president of Sri Lanka a toothless lion. This is an allegation, of course, that lies against Minister Faisal Mustafa. We kindly request Minister Faisal Mustafa, the Minister of Sports at the moment, to eliminate fraud and corruption and kindly please protect the sports of cricket in Sri Lanka, which many of us Sri Lankans, if at all of Sri Lankans, holds quite dear and close to their hearts. It's back to the main news.
Thank you, Shine. That's all we have for you this evening. Pleasure being with you. Take care.